put the call to the honourable member for Braddon.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and it's an absolute honour to rise on your call. I said in my first speech that this place is a daunting place. Well, it's still a daunting place, and rightly so. The customs and traditions that surround this chamber remind us of the history and the very reason that we sit here in this parliament. The fact that you, Speaker, sit from an elevated position and control both sides of the argument and both sides of the debate mean that you are the fulcrum of the scales of justice when it comes to that great Australian principle, that of a fair go. And that's what I'm about, a fair go. The fact that we all sit on an even level means that we are selected by the majority of our constituents to come from the four corners of this nation to represent them without fear or favour in this place, in this fair go place, in a fair go country. And it's important. The mace is your instrument of appointment, Speaker, with its crown pointing towards the government. And long live the crown, only once we are the government. And the Australian national flags. The Australian national flags, to me, symbolise the four corners of the nation. And that flag means everything to me. And I'll explain as I go through, summing up what is important for my service, not only here, but in serving the nation in the Defence Force. But that flag means everything to me. And I look at it for daily inspiration, and it gives me strength. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues today and all the help and support, the friendship that you've given me over the 6 years that I've been here. It doesn't only limit to this side of the chamber. There are some decent people from all over the chamber, and I want to acknowledge that. I want to recognise that. Mind you, I've seen some dead-set shockers come through here. I want to recognise our leader, and more about that later. I have my family, and that was a surprise visit. My family are up from the great state of Tasmania. Megan, thank you for bringing the kids up. Megan, you've been an incredible strength to me over the last 2 terms, the last 6 years. And I'm the bloke that's been sneaking into your house late at night when the kids are asleep, sleeping on the couch and then leaving before they wake up. But I want to acknowledge all spouses, all partners, because they're part of our team. The work that they do, the rubbish that they have to put up from time to time, the support that they give us, and sometimes they live a lonely life because we live a life in pursuit of this place and our country. So, Megan, you're a dead-set champion. I thank you for that, and I couldn't have done it without you, Megan. Next to Megan is my son Hamish, with the Matthew McConaughey haircut, mind you. Hamish, I'm so proud of the young man that you've become. You were just 8 years old when we lost Mum and my beautiful Amanda Jane. And I stood with you at her funeral. I held you. And I've stood with you ever since. And I'm proud of the young man that you've become. You know what it's like to be knocked down, but in the great Australian spirit, mate, you know what it's like to get back up again. And sometimes you need mates to do that. And that's important. I remember at Mum's funeral, I gave you a little dove to release, mainly because you're a farm kid and you needed something to do to keep you out of mischief. But as that dove flew away, I made a promise under my breath to the universe. I promised myself that I would never put earning money, paying the farm off and my job come between that and my family. And yet here I am, many years later, doing exactly that. So I'm sure that everyone in this place will understand. So Hamish, thank you. I'm proud of you and I love you. And then there's little Isla. Where are you, Isla? When you were born, you represented a new chapter in our lives. You're a beautiful kid, you've got a beautiful soul, and I want to acknowledge that you've had to do a lot of things and a lot of achievements at school without Dad being there. So hopefully we'll fix that from now on. I love you, Isla, and you've got a great future in front of you. And then there's little Elsie, and Elsie's had a big trip. Elsie's a little determined, a little grumpy. She's very focused. It's marvellous what genetics does, and I'm glad she's thrown to a mother. But to my family, I want to say thank you for all that you've done, not only for me, but for the electorate and all those long hours that you've had to endure. I also want to recognise my staff. Now, I haven't had a big turnover of staff. I've had the same staff more or less the whole way through. And whilst it'd be remiss of me to break that communication security and release that call sign on an unsecure network, they know who they are, and I know who they are, and more importantly, the electorate knows who they are. And just when we speak of staff, I want you to look at your own staff as we go into Christmas. I want you to recognise the fact that they're on the end of those phone calls, dealing with those hurt people. And we all know that hurt people can hurt. We don't think that that comes and has some impact onto our staff, then we need to think again. So I recognise all the staff, and I mean that sincerely. We couldn't do it without you, and you live a very necessary role in doing our job. As I said before, the customs and traditions around this place remind me of my job and my role and what is important. And as I look to that flag, I look to the fly quadrant of the flag, to the Southern Cross. The Southern Cross is important. It's been our navigation tool for many tens of thousands of years. Now, the small star in the Southern Cross, that is called Epsilon. It is the smallest star, but it's somewhat brighter than the others. It's actually two stars combined. And that reminds me of my state of Tasmania. The smallest state. In fact, Tasmania is less than 2% of Australia's landmass. But we receive more than 13% of Australia's rainfall. It's captured in 54 hydro dams, and we have 30 power stations churning away. They've been like that for more than 100 years, generating clean, efficient, reliable energy, baseload energy. In fact, at the moment, we are exporting from the great state of Tasmania by Basslink 278 megawatts of energy, and that's going into Victoria. I hope they don't waste it. The greatest determinant for any civilisation is the production of reliable and cheap energy. It attracts industry and it moves a nation forward. And our nation is at a critical juncture when it comes to the production of cheap, reliable, environmentally friendly energy in this state, in this country. Now, Tasmania is somewhat different. Our energy needs are different to that of the rest of the country. There out of our 10,400 gigawatt hours of energy that we consume each year, about 86.5% comes from our hydro power stations. The remainder comes from wind and solar. And we've also got a line as a backup, because we're practical people down there in this great state of Tasmania, a line into the mainland of Australia which can import energy if we require it. We've also got a 47 petajoule gas line that comes from the mainland to Tasmania into Bell Bay, and that powers our backup generator, because we know that we need options. We know that we need reliability, but we also need survivability. So when one technology doesn't work, or is running low on water, we've got others to fall back on. And that diversity, that technology-agnostic approach, is what I believe strongly in. We can't simply go down the ideological road of excluding one technology over another, and that technology mix will be different all over the country. We need to be smart about it, and as the member for McPherson rightly pointed out, we need to apply some science to that. We shouldn't be frightened of new technology. We shouldn't be frightened of nuclear energy. After all, the beams of sunlight that come through that skylight up there come from a thermonuclear ball of gas in the middle of our galaxy. If you have a look at how much radiation surrounds the Earth, then have a look at the CSIRO report on radiation levels across the globe. The CSIRO are indeed a fantastic organisation, and the CSIRO deemed that in my electorate, the electorate of Braddon, at a place called Cape Grim, is the cleanest air on the planet. The cleanest air on the planet. We also have the purest water. But as I'll explain in a minute, we are also the powerhouse when it comes to the production of industry, the production of agriculture, the production of forestry, the production of advanced manufacturing, defence manufacturing. All these things, we are the engine room of Tasmania's economy. And yet here we are at the same time, simultaneously, contemporaneously, having the cleanest air and the cleanest water. Yeah. What does that tell me? It tells me that we can achieve that balance. Just like you, Speaker, achieved that balance of fairness across the chamber. We can achieve that with an energy mix also. Balance is important. Nature believes in balance, and so do I. The electorate of Braddon is like no other, and one of the reasons that I put my hand up to serve the electorate of Braddon is because I was basically fed up. I was fed up with previous members from all different parties, right across the board, talking down our region. We've got the highest rates of welfare. We've got comorbidity rates through the roof. This is bad, that's bad. Give us some more federal money. As I look at my kids up there, I point out to them how bright their future can be if only they take hold of it and take that first step. Well, it's no different with the electorate. Those young people were leaving in droves. They were moving away from our great electorate, away from our great state to the mainland, and sometimes never returning. So I started with my great team of staff and my family talking that region up and working hard every day to ensure that they had the enablers that they needed to make their life and their futures better. And we did that. In my first term, Braddon received the highest amount of federal investment in its history. The highest amount in its history. And that didn't just go on wasted pork barrel. That went on roads and freight installations. It went on cool rooms. We built a university. Now, I'm a bloke that left school before he turned 15. I did an apprenticeship, and then at 18 joined the army. They put me back through school. But I didn't just go back and finish my education. I went back and found education. And I found how transformative that was and how many doors that unlocked. And I know how important education is. So the University of Tasmania Cradle Coast campus was funded and built, and now it specialises in training health professionals and allied health professionals in Burnie and the northwest coast of Tasmania. It's fully subscribed. We're training RNs, we're training psychologists, we're training physiotherapists, we're training GPs through the Royal College, and they work in a ward environment, and I'm extremely proud of what we've been able to achieve there. We've also unlocked our great agricultural industry and our advanced manufacturing sector. In the northwest coast of Tasmania, we also have defence manufacturing down there, with Elvingston producing the hulls for Land 400, Land 8116, our mobile 155mm howitzer. Every day, those people in my electorate are working hard. Every day, those people in my electorate are taking risks and spending money and investing in themselves. Robert Gordon Menzies mentioned the forgotten people. Later on, Howard called them the battlers. Morrison, the quiet Australians. I call these people that are working hard every day, I call them the real people, and I've always called them the real people. And they're the ones that I take the most notice of. They're often the ones that say the least. They rarely whinge. They rarely write a letter to the editor. They rarely stage a lobby on the lawns of Parliament House or glue themselves to some bridge somewhere. But these real people are the ones that are driving this country forward. These real people are the ones that simply roll their eyes. These real people are the ones that are getting up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning producing 11% of Australia's fresh milk on the northwest coast. These real people are already awake, so they don't need to be woken up by anybody from here. It frustrates me sometimes, and I mentioned at the start, that we are elected here by the majority of our constituents. And here we go. We come to this place and we waste copious amounts of energy and time, and money for that matter, because money is time, on a noisy minority. Well, all the while, these real people are screaming for help. So my message today is we need to start taking notice of the real people in this world, the real Australians, and applying some real solutions for them. Speaker, I had the huge honour of spending 2 decades of my life in the Defence Force, in the Royal Australian Corps of Signals, and I had the honour of serving with literally thousands of this country's best young men and women. And that has indelibly etched the way I am as a person, and I make no apologies for that. I've worked with some damn fine leaders also. And so, for me, those veterans, those of us that have served, are important to me. And I'm very proud to be able to say to you today that on the Northwest Coast now has its own wellness centre. And Andrew Clark is up. Put your hand up, Andrew. Andrew and I served in the army together. He was a bomb technician, an explosives expert. Oh, he worked with explosives anyway. But on exiting defence, they said to him, "Major Clark, what would you like to do?" And he said, "Well, I want to continue to help fellow human beings." So now he's a GP. He's one of our greatest GPs. And he heads up that Veterans, Family and Wellness Centre in Burnie. He does a fantastic job. There we reconnect veterans to a new family, because that is absolutely important and critical when it comes for them making the transformation from the military family to their new employment. We find them a job, but you don't do it with kid gloves either. Andrew has got a no-nonsense policy where veterans are required to take the first step themselves. The pity parties have ended, and we say to our veterans, get off the couch. Someone is always there to help you. Someone will always be there to help you, and you need to take that first step. And it's working fantastically. I've always said, and I want to raise this point very strongly, that I believe the key to our veterans making a transformation from the military to their new life is through their families. Because those kids are affected by that trauma that sometimes we go through in the military. Those kids need to understand why mum or dad feels the way that they do. Those kids will I've actually helped vet them through. And so Andrew is working on a plan where that family moves through that treatment process, and then at the end of it, when dad or mum gets off the rails a little bit, there's nothing like a gentle reminder from a child out of the mouths of babes that bring you back onto track pretty quickly. And I learnt that in that story I told you of Hamish earlier. I've had the absolute honour and privilege of also serving with many fine leaders. And in my first speech here, my maiden speech, I told the story about Major General Cosgrove. And we were on the border between Indonesia and East Timor in 1999 during Interfet, and he was fed up in a orders group. He got fed up with some of the staff officers, and he banged the table and he said, "I am sick to death of some of you people telling me why I can't do things. You need to start telling me how I can." Isn't there something in that for all of us here? And those real people that I talked about, that's what they're looking for, so desperately. They're not looking for excuses or laws or anything else. They just want their problem fixed. I was asked by a journalist following the last election whether I was right or left. And to me, that's not how my mind works. And I told the story of a lady that I know that works at Simplot at a vegetable factory. She stands there all night sorting carrots. It was the middle of winter, and she'd pulled an extra shift because they couldn't get enough people for the next shift. So she did 2 8-hour shifts on her feet sorting carrots. She thought about, it was going into winter, those kids needed a new winter uniform. The little girl needed a new tunic, the little boy needed a new jumper. They both needed new shoes. She got in the car after those 2 back-to-back shifts and drove home in the rain. The car needed new tyres. Oh, that's right, the insurance and the registration's due. And that was confirmed to her when she got home to make those kids their lunch before they got to school. And the magnet on the fridge wasn't strong enough to hold the bills, and they all fell off. And as she's picking them up, she said to me, "I just bawled. I bawled my eyes out. Everything I touch has gone through the roof. Everything I touch makes me give up. The only thing that drives me forward is my family." She was a real person. She had real problems. She had real issues. She had real kids. And she couldn't care less whether I, as her representative, was right or left. She just wanted her stuff fixed. Now, isn't that right? The real people of this world, I sometimes agree with Robert Menzies, and they are forgotten. And on this side, we know that they will be put front and centre once again, because we really do need to start listening to them. I mention leaders, and when I mention leadership, I describe it in 3 words, and they all start with the letter F. You nervous, Speaker? The 3 Fs I use to describe leadership are firm, fair and friendly. And you need to be all of those things in equal measure. And if you are, doesn't matter what severity you are, as long as they are equal, you'll get on in life when it comes to military leadership. And military leadership is not exclusive. Leadership is important. I've seen many different leaders approach leadership in many different ways. And one of the blokes that I want to mention here today, I want to acknowledge, is a bloke that's touched my life not only in the military but also in this place. And that is Major General Jim Mullen, or Senator Mullen, and I miss him every day. Jim used to talk about defending the country, and he used to say that it takes more than a defence force to defend a country. It takes a country to defend a country. And ain't that coming true now? As we look at the rising issue when it comes to geopolitical situation across the Indo-Pacific, when it comes to our cyber grey zone operations of state-based actors, we often, and I know this from my work on the Defence, Foreign Affairs and Trade Committee, we often focus on the shiny things in life. The shiny things, the AUKUSes, the Land 400s, the precision strike-guided missiles. But again, I get back to those real people, because at the edge and behind and around each part of those shiny things is a person, is a highly trained individual. I've always said you can have the very best and finest rifle in the world. It's not until you put a well-trained and highly motivated digger on the blunt end of the thing that it turns into a lethal capability. Ain't that right, Phil Thompson?
Absolutely.
And so Jim was right. Jim was also a philosopher when it came to his love of not only the country but combining that with the defence of this nation and the national security strategy that we so desperately need. I spoke of Jim's funeral and I spoke of the flag that covered his coffin that day. So again, that flag is intermeshed and interwoven into everything that I think about. But blokes like Jim Mullen, every day of his life was spent in the preservation and the strength of that flag. And I think that that's why I have such a solemn focus on the power and the strength of that flag. Jim was a leader in every true sense of the word. And when it comes to leaders, Peter Dutton, I see that strength in you. You have the moral compass, you have the moral strength, and you have the moral support on those benches behind you. And I know that you'll stick up for that little girl that's too frightened to go to school just because she's Jewish. Well, that little Indigenous kid in Alice Springs that's too frightened to go home because Dad's been on the drink and she doesn't want to be bashed or raped. It's not very nice, is it? But it's real. It's real. And it's going to take real leadership and it's going to take a real plan. And no welcome to country in this place is going to fix that. But Peter, I've got a lot of faith in you and so do the people on the benches behind you. Finally, I guess I should close with some words about our flag and how important that is to me. And I think it's best summed up by a story that I read about following the Great War, when some school kids visited a museum and they found an old flag, a ratted and torn flag. And they asked the guide from the museum what that old flag was about. He was a veteran. He had his medals on. And he said to the kids, well, that isn't exactly a flag. That is called a gidon. And a gidon is the battle honours that our light horse, our Australian light horse, have. Andrew Hastings. In the military we have colours, banners, standards, gidons, and they are absolutely sacred. They are the thing that the soldiers dress themselves off when they go into battle. It dictates the line of advance and the rate of advance. To lose one's colour or gidon is a fate worse than death. It's a disgrace. And these particular gidons, on the 31st of October 1917, were in the centre between the 4th and the 12th Regiments of the Australian Light Horse as they charged on those Turkish trenches in a place called Beersheba. They took those trenches and they took those wells and they saved literally hundreds of thousands of soldiers. And the old bloke that was in the museum looked at the kids and he said that it was simply a moth-eaten rag on a worm-eaten pole. Now, that does not do much to stir a man's soul. 'Tis the deeds that were done neath the moth-eaten rag, when the pole was a staff and the rag was a flag. Look after our flag and all the customs and all the history that it contains, because it will chart a way forward. Protect those real people that I talked about, because they've got real issues, and we shouldn't be frightened to talk about them here. And finally, I want to say that I am the most humble, the most grateful and the most loyal servant of the greatest electorate, of the greatest state, the greatest country in the world, and may it always be the land of the fair go. I want to thank everybody for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Well, thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I want to pay tribute to the amazing Gavin Pearce. That was a fairly humble presentation, but there are a number of themes that ran through it. And what I know of Gav is that he was a soldier for 20 years, and he went into some detail but didn't do enough credit to his distinguished career. He's been a successful farmer and small business person, and I mean very successful. And he has had a distinguished career in this place for the last 6 years. He spoke of the love of his family, the loss and the accomplishments. Sometimes when you think about someone in this place, you can go to particular stories, and as we look back in the years ahead about our friends and the contribution they've made to this place, there are different words that spring to mind. The word association with somebody. And there is no doubt in my mind that into the future, and whenever we think about Gavin Pearce, I will always, I believe, have the first word in my mind to be either patriot or digger or soldier. He's proud of his service here in 6 years, but not every day has been a joy for Gavin, because he has worn his heart on his sleeve. He's worked hard for constituents. He's sacrificed an enormous amount in terms of his own family and the time spent with them. But what is most in his soul and what is most, I think, within his DNA is his time having served in the Australian Defence Force. And he is somebody who has a great love for this country, our flag obviously, but he embodies the best of our country, and we should look to him for inspiration into the future, as I'm sure his children do today and will for many generations in his family to come. So Gavin, for what you've done for our party and for our country and for your great state, I say thank you. But importantly, and I know that, as I say, this is what embodies you most, thank you for your 20 years of distinguished service, the young lives that you've influenced, the correction that you've given, the harsh words that you've spoken on occasion, and the way in which you have provided leadership to those young diggers. You're a patriot, you're a true gentleman, and you're a great friend to all of us. Thank you so much.